Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is now just a little over 1 month away from its official release by Disney, Lucasfilm, J.J. Abrams, and even creator George Lucas. That is all set and ready to end the Skywalker saga and the sequel trilogy itself. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, what's really exciting about Episode 9 is that we do know that this movie is going to be the culmination of the Skywalker saga, but also a lot of fans out there, including myself, are very concerned about this movie. Of course, on Disney and Lucasfilm's vision and how they actually want things to be with Episode 9. However, I'm sure that all of you are very well aware about George Lucas and his involvement with Episode 9 and everything that's going on over at Disney and Lucasfilm as we speak in order to save the rise of Skywalker. Now, with that being said, what's really intriguing has all to do with creator George Lucas, his involvement currently with this film, and the plan to save this movie during the final phase of post-production before its debut on December 19th of this year and before the premiere coming in just a couple of weeks from now. Now, on top of all of this, what's really intriguing has all to do with, of course, creator George Lucas, J.J. Abrams, Disney, Lucasfilm, etc., etc. Now, it's described that during many of the reshoots and rewrites that took place during the months of August, September, and October is when many adjustments were made to the second and third acts of the film, where many scenes were deleted from the initial cut of the movie, and even changing around 70% of the Palpatine scenes for the film. It's explained that as of right now, George Lucas is helping Disney and Lucasfilm, as well as J.J. Abrams, to help save the rise of Skywalker from its current state, and that this is also especially and applies to the ending of the movie. It's explained that George Lucas has a plan to save the Star Wars franchise, and that, of course, what Lucasfilm and Disney are allowing George to do is by using some of the deleted scenes from the initial cut of the movie, that George is actually said to be using some of those deleted scenes from the initial cut, described to be using some of his scenes that were originally going to be used for the film before they were cut by Disney and Lucasfilm back in August of this year. It's explained that Disney cut around 30% of George's scenes for this year, and of course, George Lucas is going to be using some of those sequences for The Rise of Skywalker, and that George plans to use a certain percentage of those segments that he wrote with J.J. Abrams and even directed that will bring the film on the right path for Star Wars fans around the world. It's explained that George Lucas wants to do something very special for the character of Luke Skywalker that will change how fans view The Last Jedi, and that George is described to be using a very important scene that Mark Hamill was involved in that was written by George Lucas that will be used for the upcoming film. Also, it's explained that George is adjusting the pacing of the movie by taking out some scenes and replacing them with others. It's explained that in the current cut of the film, there are segments of the film that were actually somewhat slow-paced, and that those scenes are being taken out by George and replaced with some of the scenes that he directed back in early 2019 this year. Now, that Disney wanted to cut out, of course, that George is now bringing back. It's explained that George Lucas also will be including some of John Williams' new tracks and switching them around with other scenes to make the sequence have a different tone for the film. Disney and Lucasfilm now only have 32 days to go before its release, and that patching the film is, of course, moving rather smoothly and is getting involved and resolved day by day, that they are currently working around the clock and rushing their way through the last phase of post-production. It's explained to be the reason as to why the marketing of Episode 9 has been far less than The Last Jedi's and The Force Awakens, and currently Kathleen Kennedy is said to be far less involved with the film and letting George and JJ move things around. However, George is said to be the one calling the shots by moving around the scenes and shifting the themes by John Williams into different scenes, and even reviving some of the deleted scenes that he directed with Mark Hamill for the role of Luke Skywalker. George is also said to be supervising the visual effects team as well for some of the de-aging technology being used for the flashbacks. So let's go over a couple of parts about this, and one thing I just got to bring up here is that I'm very happy that George is and was on board for this movie. The fact that they really decided to make a big turn with this movie back in August, September, and October through all the reshoots, and how it kind of brought them on a terrible path, and now they're trying to patch it all together, make things right. It just seems like that the reshoots almost, at least in my point of view, were done for no reason at all. However, the one thing that I am worried about when it comes to George Lucas, and I will bring this up, is that I'm crossing my fingers that George is not just being used by Disney and Lucasfilm as a scapegoat. This way, once the film arrives, and let's say if it doesn't do too well at the box office, or a lot of fans just don't agree with it, let's hope that Disney and Lucasfilm are not just using George as a scapegoat to point fingers at him, once the movie releases, saying, hey, George helped us out, and you really can't blame us. I hope it's not going to be like that, and I think that what they're trying to do here is that what they're really trying to do, they're trying to save this film because this movie, believe it or not, is going to determine the future of the Star Wars franchise. Everything related to Disney Plus, the new Star Wars trilogy, the new canon material, the new Star Wars universe that they plan to initiate in 2020, all these different things are really at stake depending on the box office results of The Rise of Skywalker, and at the end of the day, that's really all Disney and Lucasfilm really care about, right? It's all about the box office results. We saw a great example of that with Solo and why it failed and how that actually led to the cancellation of over 10 Star Wars films throughout the 2020s. And even Mark Hamill said this at some interview that, it's not about what the fans really like, really, it's just a matter if it makes money that they will actually continue this massive franchise. And Mark Hamill was talking about this. You guys can go ahead and look it up. It's a very interesting interview that he did. And this was actually before The Last Jedi even released in a very strange way. But one thing I will say about George is that he knows Star Wars best. I mean, this is the man who created Star Wars back in 1977. Say what you will about the prequels. I will say that if it weren't for George, we wouldn't have Star Wars, period. We wouldn't have the originals. We wouldn't have how, George Lucas literally reshaped how cinema was even used in pop culture, how filmmaking was actually applied, in pop culture. George really changed everything. He really did. And it's not just about the filmmaking, it's also about, the ways of using practical effects the way that he did, and all the different types of technology that he used for the special effects. I mean, it was revolutionary, and it really was a big part in its time. And the fact that now George is involved with The Rise of Skywalker, it really does bring me hope, because yes, like I say, I'm not a big fan of, some of the choices that they made with the prequel trilogy era, but generally speaking, I love the prequels. I will say that I'm a prequel supporter, and I do have to say that there are parts of those movies that I just disagree with, but there's a lot of good points in each and every movie, like The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. Each movie has its epic moments, and that, I believe, will be applied to The Rise of Skywalker through George. So, that's the thing about this film. Disney and Lucasfilm, they know what's at stake here, they know what the fans want, and they know how the fans will react if things don't go their way. And they don't want another backlash like with what happened with The Last Jedi. With The Last Jedi, that led to the cancellation of many Star Wars movies because of the massive impact it had on Solo: A Star Wars Story's box office results. There's no denying that. And when we look at Episode 9 here, right? 32 days to go now, from release. They really do have to get, everything together and really get things going, and it's actually said that things are moving smoothly and moving rather quickly, where all the scenes are being, pretty much shifted around and rechanged, and kind of just changing the overall tone of Episode 9 between George Lucas and J.J. Abrams. And once again, this is actually said to explain as to why the marketing of this movie is far less than that of The Last Jedi's and The Force Awakens. It really makes you wonder and understand now as to why we're not having a lot of TV spots in early to mid-November like what we got with The Last Jedi. And that does make a lot of sense now. Now, they do actually plan an international trailer that's coming out this month, most likely near Thanksgiving, which is, by the way, the 28th of this month. So, give or take maybe the 27th or the 30th for all we know, who knows? But nonetheless, they are going to be marketing this film very, very soon. It's just that we had a little bit of a delay because of this massive change between Disney, Lucasfilm, J.J. Abrams, George, Kathleen Kennedy, you name it. And I'm very relieved to actually hear that, Kathleen Kennedy is far less involved with this entire process, because I feel that we do need a new head over at, of course, Lucasfilm. Somebody else needs to take over the role of president, in my point of view, at least. Anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
get along.